Hi, everybody, and welcome to this conference hosted by MS Focus, the Multiple Sclerosis Foundation. I'm your host, Deborah Foreman, and I'm the Educational Programs Coordinator here at MS Focus. Today's program is in honor of the 2025 National Caregivers Month, and it's being made possible with the support of both Genentech and Novartis. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and I hope you enjoy the webinar. I'm thrilled to introduce our speaker today. Nichole Goble is the current Director of Community Initiatives at Caregiver Action Network. Nichole also brings a unique perspective to her role, being an individual with a disability that has been on both sides of the caregiving relationship. So, Nichole, I know you have slides, and I
Yeah,
believe
so let me just get myself going here.
you could do it.
Now, I think you should be seeing my screen now.
I do.
Perfect. So, I'm really excited to be here and be chatting with you all. It is the very start of November, and November is National Family Caregivers Month, and I really can't think of a place I would rather be than chatting with some caregivers. So what I wanted to talk about today is really digging into what is a caregiver, really looking at what a caregiver is kind of defined as and redefining it a little bit, making sure that we're really looking at the broad spectrum of caregivers because I find that this is a struggle when we find a lot of caregivers who are providing support and care to a loved one, but aren't raising their hands and saying, I'm a caregiver. So we're going to be exploring lots of that in this presentation. I'm also going to be talking about some of the resources that we have here at Caregiver Action Network, as well as talk a little bit about National Family Caregivers Month and what we have in store. So let's get right into it. All right. So, as the lovely introduction stated, my name is Nichole, and I'm the Director of Community Initiatives here at Caregiver Action Network. I've been with the organization now for 8 years, and the way that we have been able to support and meet the needs of caregivers, specifically caregivers um, that are caring for loved ones with specific conditions or disabilities has really ramped up, especially in the last handful of years as we've continued to develop lots and lots of resources that are specific to caregiving for loved ones with a specific disease or condition. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're expanding on that as part of National Family Caregivers Month as well. A resource that I think will be of big interest to caregivers here. That's a little bit about who I am. In addition to the work that I do here at Caregiver Action Network, I am a caregiver. I've been a former caregiver and a current caregiver for my mom with COPD and lung cancer, a long distance caregiver. And certainly talking about the resources and supports that we have and how we define family caregiving is something that's really important and speaks to me personally. So let's start our conversation here with a question: who is a caregiver? So there's definition and perception, right? And a way to kind of contextualize this maybe is, when we think of what a caregiver is, a stereotypical picture that may pop into our minds versus what the reality is. So, what is the definition of a family caregiver? Well, it's anyone, whether that it's another family member, it can be a friend, it can be a neighbor, it can be a community member, meaning, maybe it's a church member that comes by and, maybe does a couple of things around the house. Or maybe it is that same church member who is coming by and just spending time with your loved one so that you have time to go and run a few errands. It obviously is going to look different from person to person, but it's anyone in those contexts that is providing typically unpaid support. And I say typically, it really is unpaid support, but there are programs that allow folks to essentially be reimbursed as caregivers for their loved one. But when we talk about family caregiving, it's really, you're not getting paid. It's not your job. This is just what you do, basically. Out of the kindness, love, compassion, and sense of duty of your heart. And it does have some out of pocket costs for sure, which is a whole other webinar I could get into. So obviously that is a pretty wide scope. And maybe in kind of thinking through those, maybe there's a couple of different categories of folks, or maybe people in your life that you're like, oh, yeah, they do come by and help out. So I guess they are part of the care team. I like to use the word care team and extended care team. So usually with kind of any caregiving situation, there may be a primary caregiver. There can be more than one, but typically there may be one kind of care manager, as we like to call them. And they're really the one that is kind of like making sure everyone within the care team is working together, making sure everything that needs to get done is getting done, and really being the main point person. And this can be extremely hands-on, but it can also be a long distance caregiver as well. It can be someone who, maybe there's some family members that are nearby that may be helping with some of the appointments, but that long distance caregiver is really, making sure that everyone knows the schedule, knows when all the appointments are. It's kind of delegating all of those things. So it can look a little bit different from person to person. So let's talk a little bit about the perception. And I think one of the reasons it's really important to talk about this is because, like I mentioned when we first started, a lot of caregivers don't see themselves as caregivers. They see themselves as a parent. They see themselves as the child caring for, an aging parent or a parent with a chronic condition or disability, or their spouse or partner of someone who has just been diagnosed with MS or another chronic condition, disability, or they could be a friend. And so they define themselves based on those relationships and don't necessarily think that the support that they may be providing puts them in the role of caregiver. Now, I think it was last year, I had the great fortune of, I think, chatting with maybe some of you who would have been there around what we call claiming the name of caregiver and claiming the role of caregiver, really honing in on self identification. But, you know, a piece of that is, yeah, you can see yourself as that parent, spouse, partner, friend, and not see yourself as a caregiver. And so being able to kind of change some of that thinking is really key to breaking down some of those preconceived notions of what a caregiver is and really what caregiving is. So, what are the barriers to claiming that title of caregiver or caregivers? Why do people have some challenges with that? So, one, and I think this is a really big one, it can feel like it's minimizing the autonomy and independence that our loved one has. We feel that if we're saying, oh, well, I'm a caregiver or a care partner, that it's kind of stripping some of the independence that our loved one has away from them. And that's not necessarily the case. It's simply kind of putting a name to the support that they need. And, if you really want to get into semantics, we all need support. We all kind of have our own support network and support team, whether it's, a friend that you call when you are having a bad day, or that coworker that, when you just want to get out of the office and maybe go for a cup of coffee when you have a break in your schedule and just kind of debrief on something that may be, difficult at work. That's all part of your support network. And so it doesn't minimize your ability to kind of have that independence and autonomy, but we all have our support teams. Another aspect is that it can feel like it minimizes the relationships I hit on earlier. So I'll talk a little bit about this, I think, more specifically in just a bit, but it a lot of caregivers can feel like they get lost in the role of caregiving. And so part of that means that instead of being that parent, that child, that spouse, that friend, they simply are just the caregiver, the care partner. They're not necessarily that other relationship anymore. That other relationship kind of takes a back burner. And that can be a real hardship for folks when, kind of seeing themselves as a caregiver, claiming that title, because we don't want to sideline that relationship. The next piece that I want to highlight here is cultural understandings of caregiving. In different cultures and different backgrounds, caregiving looks a little bit different, or there's different approaches to it. For some cultures, it's very common that it's not really a thing that you would, you know, move away from home and not care for an aging parent or be a long distance caregiver. You know, your parents move in with you, or you all live in the same home, whatever that can look like. A lot of cultures have multi generational homes where it's grandparents, parents, kiddos, and everyone's together and kind of working as a family group. And everyone is kind of in on that care team. So, some of those cultural components can make it difficult for someone to see themselves in that caregiving role. And I think also, I mentioned this or alluded to it at the beginning, was we may just not see the support that we're providing as caregiving. Kind of goes with what we stereotypically think of as caregiving, right? Um, and so we may not see the day-to-day things that we do as caregiving because maybe our loved ones are really independent. They just need a little bit of our help from time to time, or there can be lots of different scenarios there, but you just may not recognize the support that we're doing as caregiving, even if we are giving that support. So those are just some of the barriers. So I want to switch gears here and talk a little bit about the mental health impact of caregiving and caregiver burnout. So what do I mean when I say the impact of mental health? Well, surprise, surprise, caregiving or being a care partner has an impact on our mental health. It also has an impact on our physical health as well. And a lot of this is going to vary. Just this earlier this year, the new Caregiving in the U.S. report came out from our friends over at the National Alliance on Caregiving, and AARP. And it's a report that they've done now for a number of different years, kind of in different kind of periods to kind of, see what caregiving looks like in the US, measure what some of the unique challenges that caregivers are facing, and what are some of the various impacts that caregiving has on those that are supporting a loved one. And so mental health is always, a big part of that report and part of that conversation. So when we talk about the impacts on mental health, what does it look like? How does it manifest or present? Well, it's chronic stress and worry. You'll notice here, I chose to kind of single out the word chronic. Look, stress and worry are something that as a human experience is unavoidable, right? We'll all experience stress and worry repeatedly in our lives. But the chronic stress and worry, the inability to kind of shake it off or get respite from those feelings, that's what we're talking about with the chronic element to that. Compassion fatigue. Now, this is something that a lot of folks don't like to talk about. Compassion fatigue, what is that? Well, it's kind of when we have hit uh, our our cap on caring, essentially. If you've heard the term "I'm all out of spoons," something that you hear a lot in the disability community, it just means I don't have the capacity right now, kind of capped off. And it's that compassion fatigue. We lead with so much compassion and care that sometimes we just get zapped. And so that's what that's referring to. Guilt. Now, guilt can manifest in a lot of different ways, but I think that probably one of the ways that caregivers across lots of different um, disease or conditions can really flag it is that guilt over needing a break, that guilt over needing to get away, to kind of take off that caregiver hat for a moment and do something for themselves, prioritize themselves. And that can come with some guilt, can feel selfish. I'll talk about that in just a minute too. Loneliness. This kind of goes hand in hand with another aspect of what I was talking about, where caregivers can feel that they lose themselves in their role as a caregiver. They can begin to feel, and I guess loneliness and isolation kind of go hand in hand. You start not to be able to have the time to hang out with friends like you did or enjoy hobbies and things that you were really active or involved with um, prior to really taking on that role of being a care partner or a caregiver. And that's isolating. And so that can manifest in loneliness. And that can be really, really rough. Really, really rough. So, those are some of the challenges. Those are some of the impacts that uh, caregiving can have on our kind of mental health and mental well being, emotional health, emotional well being. How do we recognize burnout? Well, first off, let's define burnout. Burnout is that cap. It's where the stress has gotten too much that we're simply at our wits' end. We cannot do anymore. Our plate is too full. The camels or the donkey, whatever animal you use in that idiom of, it's the straw that broke the camel's back or whatever. Um, it's that straw. That the back is broke, the straw was laid down. We have nothing else in us. That's obviously a pretty bad place to be. We want to avoid being there because it can be a pretty dangerous place to be for our own well being, for our loved ones' well being, but also it can be a hard place to come back from because it's kind of that we've reached our stress, our stress threshold. God, putting those two words together is kind of rough. Um, but also, it's kind of been ongoing. We talked about chronic stress and worry before, right? So it's kind of like that repeated constant stress, constant worry, and we're just totally tapped out. So, what are the signs to look for that maybe, just maybe, you're at that place of caregiver burnout? Irritability. So, all of a sudden you find yourself getting short with maybe coworkers. You find yourself getting short with other family members. You find yourself getting short or angry at your loved one over things that you may reflect on, a little bit later and say, why did I get upset? That wasn't a big deal. Um, so irritability, emotional numbness or emotional detachment, just kind of feeling nothing. Again, talking about reaching that capacity, you got nothing more to give. And so you just kind of detach, disassociate kind of. And that's not a really good place to be. That's not a healthy place to be. Another thing that can flag that you're getting to that place of burnout is changes in sleep. Sleeping a lot or not sleeping at all. Certainly, we've all had those, I think, probably periods of time where maybe, you know, we're not getting enough sleep. Something's keeping us up at night, or we're really, really tired. Uh, that kind of. But this is where it's kind of, again, sustained over a period of time, and it's kind of sudden too, right? All of a sudden we start to notice, wow, I really need a lot more sleep. I'm just really, really tired. Um, or I really can't sleep. I'm exhausted, but my mind won't let me rest. So changes in sleep. Hopelessness. I think that one's pretty straightforward. And of course, there's some physical manifestations too. And this is pretty common, right? Whenever we're at a high stress level, we can see it manifest in lots of different ways, probably ways that we just talked about from that emotional piece, but physical. You're really tired. Maybe you've got headaches. Uh, maybe your stomach's upset. You're not able to eat. Um, Lots of different ways that stress can impact our body. And so, kind of being on the lookout for those. I flagged, fatigue, which is like exhaustion to the next power, squared, whatever you want to say. It's where you just are both tired, but you just don't have any energy to do anything. You start to feel just completely kind of like everything is happening, both in kind of slow-mo and really hyper fast too. And again, kind of a rough place to be. But yeah, headaches are fairly common too. As someone who doesn't really have headaches all that often, I know that, for example, NFC month is a busy, busy time here. There's lots on all of our plates here around Caregiver Action Network. And so yeah, it can be stressful. And I know that usually by the end of the month, I may be like, why is my head hurting a little bit? And it's because I've been kind of on go with my colleagues here for NFC month. So, you know your body, you probably know some of those flags. So things to be on the lookout for, because it's just a sign that you've been at that heightened stress level for quite some time, and it's having an impact on your body. All right. So I want to ask a couple of questions. And please feel free in the chat, or wherever you're kind of plugging in here. I have two questions here. So now that we've kind of established what caregiver burnout is that something that you feel you've experienced? And what was some of the things that helped you recognize that? So I'll give you just a minute to go in the chat, let us know, share. Oh, I'm not hearing you, Deb.
Sorry about that. I know
Oh,
everybody has thoughts in their head. They just have to put them into writing.
oh, there
There
we
we
go.
go.
I see Tina has
Yep.
turned in, yeah. And definitely be thinking about this as we continue to go along. Because caregiver stress and burnout is something that kind of permeates every aspect of caregiving, right? Um, we have all these resources, tools, and conversations to help alleviate some of that stress and make caregiving day to day a little bit easier. So think about these questions, have them in your head. If you want to chime in at any point, please do. Also, I always like to extend an invitation. Please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Say hello, where you're from, who you're caring for. It's really nice to get to know you all and a little bit of your own caregiving.
Yeah.
All right.
Tina just said, I have had some of the symptoms you described, but maybe didn't think of them as burnout.
Exactly. Exactly. And isn't that the way it goes? Is that we have these symptoms, we have these issues, and it's not until we get to a different place where maybe, we have been able to get some support, we've been able to step away, and we have been able to kind of come back from that burnout space that we're like, I think that's what it was. I was just really, really, really stressed. And there was some bad stuff going on that I just couldn't get that support and I didn't know what I was doing. So no, it can really be something that we don't recognize at first. And I think that's why it's really important to talk about, how you can start to recognize it so that you're able to kind of address some of that before it gets too far to really have those tools available,
Mhm.
because a lot of us don't have the tools available right on hand to navigate when we've really got to that burnout point.
Yeah. Nicole, the same lady, Tina, by the way, you have my sister-in-law's exact name, Tina Davis. She says, I am living with MS and caring for my 86-year-old mom, um, who's homebound. So,
Yep.
yeah.
And
Okay.
that's the thing too. One of the things that we always want to make sure that we're paying some mindfulness to is that, you know, caregiving just isn't, someone without any health issues, complications, their own support needs, caring for someone who does have support needs. It can be individuals with disabilities, chronic conditions, older loved ones. A lot of older individuals are caring for a spouse or partner or sibling that's also older and they're navigating their own challenges as well. And that can make it a lot more difficult when you
Mhm.
have, especially a condition that impacts mobility, um, fatigue, all of these things already, and you have to provide care. Maybe you're caring for someone that has mobility needs themselves, and you have to figure out like, how do I um, how do I transfer? How do I support my loved one in moving over here? So yeah, it's uh I'm really glad that you shared that because I I think that's an important thing.
Yeah.
Um
Dean, do you want me to read them or you can read them either way? Whatever.
uh, yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that's
I
it's
want
helpful.
I wanna help you. Okay. So Dean, and I suppose this is for most people, he has had burnout before, but he never knew of that term. So he didn't recognize it until someone else said, "This is what it is," right?
See? And it's one of those things that I think sometimes we take for granted.
Mhm.
It's one of and I do this all the time. Having now worked for CAN for 8 years, I always check myself because it's like I know a number of things, but there's probably twice as many things that I don't know. And I always want to be listening and say, huh, got it. This is what this is. Now I understand.
Mhm.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, Dee.
Yeah. Tina also said that she's been caring for her mom since 2021. So she gave up her career and retired from her job to care for her mom and prioritize her own wellness. But she's curious about the stress threshold and how do you know what your threshold is?
Yeah. Um, it's going to be a little bit unique to everyone. I think that for me, we all experience stress, and caregiving is stressful. Regardless of your caregiving kind of situation, there's going to be elements of stress that are part of it. When we're caring for someone, even someone that we love dearly, there are challenges, and it's a lot to take on. And so there's going to be that stress. For me, I feel like as the way that I think about it is, you know, stress happens every day, but I'm usually able to kind of, I don't want to say shake it off, um, but I can usually manage it. It's not interrupting my day to day. When I feel like I'm getting to my stress threshold is when it starts to make it difficult to do day to day things, whether it's getting up in the morning, whether it's doing the things that I need to do to take care of myself, whether it's, even some of the things that we talked about, some of those symptoms or signs that you're getting to those thresholds, noting them and saying, huh, I yelled at my friend when we grabbed coffee because they asked this question about how my mom was doing. And why would I do that? They're my friend. they're concerned. They want to help. They want to know. And so being able to flag those things, I think is really important. But it's going to look different to you. But for me, it's always like, okay, is this stress that I'm kind of noting and easily kind of moving beyond? It's not getting me to a point to where I'm lashing out at someone, or it's making it so I can't sleep for weeks on it.
Hmm. So I see that Vicky is saying that she's 76 years old and caring. Oh, actually, I'm not sure if that was Vicky answering, but somebody is 76 years old caring for their wife with MS for 40 years. The wife has had MS, I believe, for 40 years, been doing it for 8 years, caregiving, recently experienced a slowdown in their own ability. And in terms of reacting to their wife's needs, it's, they're trying, but they're still pushing forward. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thank
So,
you for sharing that too, because it's exactly right. Especially for those of us with chronic conditions, or even those of us just as we get older, right? Um, we slow down. Certain things may become a little bit more challenging to do. And so that can make some of those caregiving things that we've been doing more challenging. And that can add to the stress, right? So, like, how do we make sure that, we're able to meet our loved ones' support needs if we're not able to do it ourselves? That can become a whole other stressor and a whole other thing. And probably a whole other webinar that we could do.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So now I want to talk about navigating some of this and ways that we can address stress and kind of, warding off a little bit of that caregiver burnout, what it looks like. And I want to start with setting boundaries. So it can be uncomfortable to talk about boundaries, setting those boundaries, because kind of feels that as caregivers, we need to do it all and we shouldn't have boundaries. And from the minute that we, um, say I'm a caregiver, it's, all hands on deck and whatever my loved one needs, I'm going to do. But that isn't necessarily feasible. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to prioritize ourselves. And so setting boundaries is key to that. And they're crucial, but it can be uncomfortable. We don't want to tell our loved ones no. But it's important that we do that. So, how do we change this thinking? How do we get a little bit more comfortable with setting those boundaries? Let's start there. One is, don't think of boundaries as selfish, think of them as sustainability. Caregiving is a marathon, it's not a sprint. Even if you are caring in a short term for someone, it's a marathon, doing a lot. You've got a lot on your plate. And so it's a marathon, and you got to be able to sustain. Got to be able to go that distance. And so setting those boundaries is really key in allowing you to do that. Uh, at the end of the day, boundaries aren't just for you, they're also for your loved one. And it helps lead to healthier and more balanced relationships. Goes back to what I was saying about how caregivers can feel like they lose an aspect or aspects of their relationship with their loved one when they become a caregiver. And so, um, you know, this helps. Setting those boundaries is key. And it also gives us as caregivers better ability to navigate those day-to-day caregiving tasks, right? Because we're setting clear boundaries. We're letting folks know kind of where lines are. So it makes that aspect of caregiving a little bit easier because we're able to have a slightly lighter load. All right. So how do we put these in place? Well, you got to start with clear communication. You have to make it clear and this is to your loved one, but also the care team, what you're able to do and what you're not able to do. And this can be hard, not just to say, but to even reconcile within ourselves. I know as a caregiver, I always feel bad. I feel like I'm letting my mom down if she calls or if she needs something and I'm not able to do something. If I'm not able to meet a need. Um, but making it clear that, hey, I'm not going to be able to do X, but let's figure out how we can get X done. That's kind of how I've come to kind of rearrange that in my head so that it makes a little bit more sense. Um, the next tip here is penciling in regular me time. You have to have those, what we call respite, right? Which is just moments where you can take off that caregiver hat. When we think about respite care or we think about taking a break, maybe we have a picture of it as like, I need a vacation. I'm going to take a week away. That's not necessarily what respite needs to be. It's not what a break needs to be. Maybe it's 30 minutes in the morning that you have time just before kind of the hubbub of the day begins, that you can have some coffee, read a paper, make a to-do list, just have time to kind of focus on you. Do some things that you want to do. Um, it's kind of like when you so I walk to and from work every day, and my walk to work is kind of my zone out time of like, all right, I'm gonna listen to a podcast, and in my head I'm gonna kind of go through all the things that are coming up today and what I have to gear up for, what's on my to-do list. Then on my way home, it's my zone out, and I get to be like, okay, let me reflect. What do I like? What worked? What didn't? All of these things. And this has been really great for me because when I go home, I don't feel like I'm carrying in the day with me. And when I leave the house, I'm not feeling as frantic because I know I've got a pretty long walk ahead of me, and I will have time to kind of sort through in my head all of the things that are kind of buzzing about what's to come. So that's kind of what we talk about with respite. It's my time to be able to just, do something I enjoy by listening to a podcast or listening to some music while just having time to kind of think, center, and reflect. And it's really, really helpful. So, really, that can look like whatever it needs to be. It can be, hey, um, making sure that you're keeping your own medical appointments. That counts as me time. That's really vital me time. So, make sure you're keeping those appointments on your calendar for sure. So, another tip here that I want to get to is delegating. So, just like I had mentioned previously, we want to feel like we can do everything, but we can't. We need help. Help for ourselves and help for our loved ones, additional help for our loved ones. And so being able to delegate tasks. So when we set those boundaries and when we say, I don't think this is something I can do, it's delegation. It's talking to other family members, friends, etc., and saying, okay, who can do this? Who's on deck? And utilizing the care team in that capacity. And this is just kind of a tip. And maybe it's simple, but it could be one of the hardest things to really lock down, which is don't instantly say yes to everything. We just want to say yes. Anytime someone asks us, hey, can you help with X? If our loved one says, hey, I need to go to this doctor's appointment. Can you make sure I'm there by this time? And we say yes, but then we're like, oh no, I've got this work meeting and now I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So, what another way to think about this is saying yes intentionally, taking a few moments, taking the time that you need to say, okay, is this feasible? Is this something I can do? Or do I need to do some planning around here? So maybe it is going to your boss and saying, hey, this appointment came up. I have to take my spouse or my parent, whoever you're caring for. I need to kind of shift my time here. I'm going to be coming in a little bit later. So maybe I can work a little bit later. Whatever it looks like in those conversations. But this is why, don't immediately say yes. Think through, is it feasible? And how is it feasible? So keeping your sense of self. This is a really big thing. We talked about how caregivers can feel like they've lost their sense of self when they take on that role of caregiving. So how can you do this? How can you maintain some of that me outside of caregiving? So, and I think this is an important thing to hit on because I think it's something that a lot of caregivers experience, regardless of what the specifics of their caregiving situation looks like. So, how can you keep that sense of self? Well, one is, when we talk about penciling in that me time, that can be making time for those hobbies and passions that you have. So, what do you like to do? What fulfills you with joy? Making time for that so that you have those things to look forward to engage in, kind of keep your mind in different spaces. That's really crucial. Keeping in touch and engaged with friends. Again, going back to that isolation and loneliness, it can be really easy when we get in the thick of caregiving to say, like, I don't have time. I don't have time to meet up for coffee. I don't have time to go out for lunch. I don't have time to do any of this. But with that me time, making sure that you're keeping that time with your friends because those are part of your support network. And it's really important. So connecting with faith and spiritual communities, if that's something that's really, really important to you, having that conduit. I can't tell you how many caregivers I speak with who say, caregiving is rough. Don't get out as much as I used to. I don't get to see my friends as much as I would like. But every Sunday, mom and I get to church. That's really our time to go and be around our church family. So whatever that looks like, that can be a really important piece because churches are really great about providing that sense of support. Faith communities are really great about providing support. In fact, a lot of communities of faith now have really specific ministries and groups that are specific for caregivers. Understanding that those that are supporting a loved one that are in their congregation need that additional support. Another thing to hit on here, asking for help when caregiving feels rough. Now, this isn't just asking for help from the care team or delegating. I think we've hit on that in kind of some previous group conversations, but this is really when it's time to maybe get some of that professional support. And that can be a hard thing to gauge. So here are some ways that you can maybe think, is it time? So the one thing I'll flag here is that persistent anxiety or depression. Do you kind of notice the theme here? So going back to one of those first slides when I said like chronic stress and worry, well, this is persistent anxiety and depression. I think a lot of us can say that we've had those moments of feeling anxious about something, whether it is connected to our caregiving or maybe it's something connected to work or anything. We've experienced a sense of anxiousness. Same thing with depression or sadness, but this is persistent. Again, that idea of like, it's not something I can shake off, something that's trying to interfere with my day to day. And it's just making it really hard to be there for my loved one and to be there for myself. Feeling emotionally numb or angry. Again, and this is that persistent feeling of, just feeling like detached from everything, finding little enjoyment or fulfillment from things, or having a more muted reaction to things that you had previously, that can be a sign that maybe it's time to seek some professional help. Experiencing joylessness and things that were very meaningful. So maybe there is a hobby or something that you really enjoy to do. And now when you have done it, it just doesn't feel the same. You don't really enjoy it as much. You just kind of are, you feel like you're kind of going through the motions. And that can be another sign that maybe you need some of that professional support. And that can look a lot of different ways too. So when we talk about professional support, we're talking about, talking to your own healthcare providers. This is something I recommend for lots of caregivers. Tell your healthcare team that you're a caregiver. So important. But also let them know if you're feeling these things so that they can get you connected to some additional supports. Maybe it's therapy, someone to talk to, maybe it's medication. They're going to be able to help and kind of get you on a path. They'll figure out what you're looking at and be able to meet some of those needs. So I really wanted to flag this before we move on, because I do think that this is something outside of just, hey, I need help. This is, wow, the stress, the burnout, everything has gotten to a place that I really don't have those tools in hand that I need to navigate this anymore. So getting that professional assistance is key. All right. So that's kind of the meat and potatoes of the subject that I want to talk about today. So now we're going to get into some resourcey things as we wrap up. It's National Family Caregivers Month. It's Plug Into Care. And really the meaning of Plug Into Care is about plugging into resources, connecting with other caregivers. But really, you get a lot of resources thrown at you. What do you do with them? How do you know it's a meaningful resource? How do you find those meaningful resources? So that's what Plug Into Care is really about. If you go to nfcmonth.org, you will see that we have a care hub, and it has some really cool things. I'm going to talk about the webinars, but we have literally it's a hub. It's these different tiles, and they are disease and condition based. One of them is for MS. So we're so grateful, Deb and some of your colleagues helped plug in some resources to help caregivers that are supporting a loved one with MS. And so if you go to nfcmonth.org, you will see MS is there. So definitely something that we'll have you check out. But really chocked full of lots of different resources. So it's not just connecting you to the resources that we have at CAN. We really wanted to be mindful and connect you with the resources that other organizations like the MS Foundation have, because they have a wealth of resources, and we don't want to reinvent the wheel. And so we've been doing webinars. We had our first one today, earlier. It will be on the website. So if you want to go back and listen, all the webinars that we do are recorded and then captured. But these are the ones that we have coming up. So take a moment, check out these topics and see if any resonate with you. We have a really cool ability when you go back to that hub and you see the webinars. You can sign up for one of them, you can sign up for two of them, or you can sign up for them all. And it's awesome. So now I want to talk about some of CAN's resources, some of our go-tos that we have. So the help desk. What is the help desk? It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a customer support line for family caregivers. And I should note that all of the resources that we provide at CAN, we charge. We know that there's a financial burden that adds to that stress that can lead to that burnout that comes with caregiving. We don't want to add on to that. So you can get connected one on one with a caregiving expert or a care advocate. They are trained to listen and they have a wealth of resources that they are going to connect you to based on what you're looking for. Some of those will be the resources that we have here at Caregiver Action Network, but it may be resources that are local or community based. Maybe you're looking for a support group in your community. They'll be able to help you find what you're looking for. So you can call this number. But if you go to caregiveraction.org/helpdesk, you'll find all the information about the help desk. Also, for NFC Month, we're really excited to announce we've expanded this so that you now have access to an app. And I know you can feel like another app I have to have on my phone, but it's really cool because it has a ton of resources, not just from ours, but from the help desk. Our partner there, Caravelle, has a robust library of resources, and you'll have access to it all. You also have access to support groups and fireside chats. It's really cool. Kindly Human. Caregivers want to talk to other caregivers. So, this is what we have, Kindly Human. You can connect to another caregiver. You can go through and hear other caregiver testimonials. One sticks out to you and you want to connect with them, kind of ping them and say, hey, I'd love to chat. And so you can find out more about this tool at Kindly Human. And of course, one of the things that with all of our resources too, yes, there is that interactive piece, but it's also kind of a resource hub too. You really want to make sure wherever caregivers are, we're also making sure that those resources are right there for them too. And then our Facebook community. I'm so excited about this. We launched it just over a year ago. We had, I think, just under 3,000 folks signed up. And when I tell you this is an active group, it's an active group. No lies. So absolutely love our Facebook community. It's a great way to chat, ask questions, and just be in community with other caregivers. And this is how you can stay connected to CAN. So thank you guys so much for letting me kind of throw lots of information out at you. I hope that some of this has been really, really helpful. I hope I've got you excited about NFC Month so that, we also have toolkits that are available on the website too. So if you are a caregiver that wants to share their story, we've made it easy for you. We've given you prompts. We've given you the ability to be, part of that conversation. And we're so incredibly thankful not only for the MS Foundation for supporting us in putting together that resource, which we look at as basically a baby step. We want to continue to build out these resources with you all. But you guys have been such a solid and stable NFC Month nonprofit partner. And we're so, so grateful for you being part of that force. So thank you so, so, so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Um, we love having you be part of this. We love that you write in our magazine. I mean, we have a lot of caregivers taking care of people, so you're really doing a tremendous job at helping them. We do have some questions.
Sure.
I have just a question of my own before I go into this. When I was caregiving for my mom, I really became like, what do they say, a mama bear. I really felt like no one could do it as well as I did. And
Sure.
I didn't take help the way I should have because I felt like nobody could do it well enough. But in hindsight, if I could go back and if I can encourage everyone listening to let people help, even if they don't do it the same way as you do, may not be quite as good as you do, but it's still helpful to you. And I learned a lot. I wish I could pass that on. Yeah. It doesn't have to be the way you do it. Doesn't have to be as good as you do it, but it can be still good enough and help you.
Exactly. And that's
Yeah.
one thing that we always tell caregivers is, give yourself credit. Um,
Yep.
we spend so much time. I know I do this all the time. Like, I'm not doing enough. I'm not doing it right. We second guess ourselves all the time. We second guess if we do need help. Is this the right kind of help? Are they going to be doing it the way that it needs to be done? But know that by navigating all of this, you are there for your loved one. You are doing the best they can, the best you can, and your loved one appreciates that.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, give
Okay.
yourself credit.
Dean has a good question. He said, what are some examples of setting boundaries? He feels incapable of helping his wife, and it's hard to undress her and dress her, as well as toileting and wiping her. And he said, I get easily frustrated. I feel forced to do something that's hard for me to do, and I don't have the right attitude often. Uh, so, he doesn't really know, he doesn't really want to do it. So he doesn't know what to do.
So setting boundaries is hard. It's obviously going to look different from person to person. One thing I will say, I'll use this example. I was a caregiver for my grandfather who had bone cancer, and I was just out of college and had just started my first kind of post college job. And then when we found out that he had cancer, um, I took a leave of absence and I moved in with him. My grandmother had just passed away from COPD um, about a year before he had told us that he had cancer. He had hidden his diagnosis from us because he wanted us to be focused on grandma. And so by the time he told us, it was, pretty advanced at that point, but he was still able to get around. Um, and so, as his mobility and ability to kind of walk um, got more challenging, my grandpa was like 6 foot, I think like 6'3", 6'4". I'm 4'8". So me helping him like get around, transferring him, getting him to the restroom. I remember once I was trying to help him and we almost took a spill, and I had to set a boundary. I had to say, okay, grandpa, I know that, one of the things we talked about, you don't want a lot of people just coming in and out, but I need help. It's not safe for me to try to support you in going down the hallway because both of us can end up in a pretty bad way. So my boundary is, yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that, but let's talk about how we can get you that help. So would it be, hey, a couple times a day having someone that could just stop by and say, okay, let's make sure that we're, you know, getting him to the shower, getting him ready for bed, and then, putting in like a little commode that was right by the hospital bed so that, needing to go to the restroom was a lot easier then. Um, he could definitely use me to kind of prop himself up and get over. But becoming mobile and getting down the hallway would be the issue. So we were able to kind of problem solve it. And that's kind of what setting boundaries is saying like, I just don't have the capacity to do this. So let's figure out another way that this can get done.
Yeah, very good. Um, Also, for anybody that doesn't have a pen handy, to write down all the information you have up on your screen, within a week or two, this information is going to be up on our YouTube channel, and it'll still be through the day, I think at least till tomorrow on Facebook. So you'll have all the time in the world to be able to write down all the contacts for CAN and get what you need from them. It's a great organization, so take your time and write down all the ways to reach them.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, Nicole, we thank you so much. This does bring us to the end of our time. Thank you for going a couple minutes over. If
Yeah.
for anybody that's missed this part or any part rather, remember go to MS Focus Facebook or MS Focus YouTube channels. Please reply to your registration email for more information on any of that. We can answer it. By participating in a very short survey afterwards, you're going to help us determine what's best for you, what's really of interest to you, what's most meaningful to you as far as programming. So I would encourage you just to take a moment to do that. We really are so grateful when you do because that's how we learn what you like. So anyway, we really appreciate it. Please join us this Thursday, 2 days from now. Oh, no, today is Monday, actually. So 3 days from now, on November 6th at 7 o'clock p.m. Eastern, there's going to be Tiffany Malone speaking, and she's going to be discussing mental health matters, balancing life, and the challenges of living with MS. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and especially to wonderful Nichole for her support and our educational programs. And once again, offering these important topics to the attendees. I'd like to thank our generous sponsors again, Genentech and Novartis, for their support. We look forward to having you all join us again real soon. See you soon. Thanks,
Thank you.
Nichole. Bye.